Hi, my name is Michael Tipper and I help develop peak performance pupils by giving them an unfair student advantage, allowing them to study, learn, remember and recall anything they choose to for as long as they choose to. Now, one of the most important skills a student can develop is the ability to manage the stress and anxiety induced by the pressures of their workload. So when I decided to create a resource to help parents guide their teens in this area, I thought I would seek out the best experts the UK has to offer to help me do that. And I hit the jackpot when I discovered Chesmoulton, also known as the Stressmaster, an executive coach, qualified psychotherapist and hypnotherapist, and corporate trainer. Ches has been helping people deal with stress for over 25 years. The author of two books, Choice and Change, How to Have a Healthy Relationship with Ourselves and Others, and his most recent one, How to Get Control of Your Stress Instead of Stress Controlling You. He is considered by many to be the UK's leading authority on stress and makes the bold claim that he will help you get control of your stress once and for all. Passionate about educating people on the truth about stress, it's an absolute joy to welcome the Stressmaster himself, Ches Moulton. Ches, welcome so much to the conversation today. It's a delight to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Michael. Thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
So the first question I'd like to ask is, how did you get into stress management and to become the UK's leading stress management expert?
Well, that last bit wasn't an easy part. The first of it was, but the last of it was not. When I was a much younger man, I had a lot of questions, and I wanted to find out the answers to those questions. And so I started to take some courses. I started to do some group work. I started to get some one-to-one mentoring as well as counseling. We called it back in the day. And some of the people that were teaching me and answering those questions and counseling me, they told me that I got it and that I should be on this side of the desk. And I thought they were just having me on. I mean, I thought, well, that's part of the program. They probably just tell everybody that. But after a while, I realized that there was something to that. So I started to do some lay counseling. I was volunteer probation officer for a couple of years as well, back in Halifax, Nova Scotia, back in Canada, where I'm originally from, born and raised. Later on, I started to pursue my own, journey and to find out about who I was and why I'd gotten this way and how I could make some changes. I wanted to change some things. So I started to do some lay counseling, as I said. Then I remember the first time somebody actually paid me money for telling them what I thought would serve them well. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just thought this was not my plan in life, but I thought if I can do this and help people and I can get paid for it at the same time, I need to get legitimized. So I spoke with some friends of mine at the time, and they put me on in a direction whereby I was able to obtain my first certificate, and that was back in 1999. I got my first certificate, and I've gotten three since. So that's how I got started. Which a lot of people that do what I do, a lot of us get started that way. We were seeking answers for ourselves, and then turn that into something that we could help others as well.
And was the journey into stress one that was driven by demand, that you saw the opportunity to help people, or was it one that you sort of fixed for yourself and then others came to you because you'd done it for yourself?
No, over the years, the first several years, probably the first 5 or 6 or 7 years that I was back in those days, we still called it counseling. There's a difference between therapy and coaching, but that's for another conversation. Back in the day, I recognized that everybody that was talking to me, all of what they were telling me, it always seemed to come down to stress. Stress was in the equation somewhere. And I picked up that very quickly that stress was either the cause of or the result of most of what was wrong with them. So I decided if I wanted to up my game, and I really wanted to be able to, have something to produce something to share with my clients, then I needed to zero in a little bit more about stress. And so that's when I went out and lo and behold, I became a certified stress management consultant. That was my fourth certificate.
And what was it that, what would you say that were the troubling consequences of stress that were most prevalent that allowed you to say, right, there's people who I need help there? What did you see the most that was manifested because of stress?
Yeah, well, there seemed to be good question. There seemed to be, as I listened to my clients, I started looking back at my client files, talking to others, thinking about myself again as well, and those around me. It seemed that their stress seemed to reside in one of, some of, or all of four high frequency categories. And those categories are communication, motivation, relationships, and planning.
Right. And was there a particular demographic that seemed to be bothered by it most, or was it just a broad brush? Pretty much everyone was bothered by it.
No, the answer to that's no. When I began my career back in the mid '90s or early '90s, mid '90s, as a lay counselor, I was dealing mostly with just ordinary people, your uncle, your sister-in-law, your neighbor, your brother, somebody like that. I started to expand my practice. I started to draw in more executives, more entrepreneurs, more managers, more CEOs, MDs, and I've had the pleasure of working with athletes, and I've done some work with some students and some young people as well. And it seems that those four categories are the same for everyone. It just depends on maybe the communication issues or the relationship issues might be different for C-suite executives as opposed to, your mother-in-law or your cousin or a student, but it's the same category. It's just the details in that category that may be different.
So the next question is like a two-part question. So what are the benefits that you can give by allowing people to be able to manage stress more effectively? And secondly, what are you helping them avoid by giving them those skills as well? Because I would imagine it's a double-edged sword.
Well, I guess the best way, what comes to mind when you ask that question is that, so there are only three things that we do as humans. There's only three. We think, we feel, and we behave. Now, behavior can be subdivided into actions and reactions, but that's pretty much it. There's only two actions. We're either proacting or reacting. There's no third acting. So we think, feel, and behave in relation to what's happening on, if we're humans, and this is our native planet, then there are only three things that are happening on planet Earth. There are people, there are places, and there are things, or stuff, as some of my friends back in Canada like to call it. So it's how we think, feel, and behave in relation to those people, places, and things that dictate the quality of our life, that dictate the level of our stress.
So now might be a good time to actually dive into the what actually is stress, because I can remember long before I understood what it was, I had no idea why I would feel tense, and then all of a sudden I was able to put a label on it because I read a book that explained what it was. I thought, that's what's going on. I mean, it still didn't change my ability to deal with it, knowing about it, and hopefully we're going to get some of those things back for yourself. So could you just give a broad picture to someone who maybe has never fully understand what this general term stress is, so they can understand what it's about?
Well, a lot of people use this word stress as a verb or an adjective. We hear people saying, and I say it sometimes myself, I got stress, or I'm stressed out, or I have stress, or I'm stressed or being stressed. Where the way that I look at all of this, stress is more of a noun. So stress is, we have an inbuilt mechanism that we're born with that is our stress mechanism. And we can't get rid of it. We wouldn't want to get rid of it. We can't eliminate it. I tell my clients, when you hear somebody telling you that they're going to eliminate your stress, run far and run fast, because you can't eliminate stress. So there are two types of stress. There's positive stress, which is that inbuilt stress system that we have, that's there to help us when we have what we perceive as dangerous and or real perceiving or real dangerous and life-threatening circumstances. Whether they are or not, we perceive them that way. Some of them may be. You know, if you're on a trekking holiday out in Southeast Asia, and you're going down the path, and you go around the path, and 100 yards down the path, there's a tiger or a lion there, and they look up at you at the same time you look up at them. That could be a life-threatening situation. That's when that inbuilt mechanism that we have. It's actually the formal name. It's called our sympathetic nervous system.
Right.
That's when that kicks in. You know, the adrenaline, the cortisol kicks off. It gives us, that strength. That the blood flow starts to quicken. Our muscles get larger, faster. We get more energy. So that's when we decide whether we're going to fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what I call a positive stress. So that's our positive stress system. But that other stress that most people are dealing with today, that one that's, I don't know, debilitating, the one that, it's like a yoke around us, a weight around us. It's what I call, would you believe, negative stress. That's the one that we have to deal with. And what happens is that so a lot of people, because of the rush and the economy, the culture, the society that we live in, everything is at the same level to them as if it was a bear climbing up the tree.
Right.
After you've climbed up the tree to get away from it, after you run into a bush or a cave to get away from that lion, they see, getting stopped at the roundabout and being in a queue and being tied up in traffic. So the stress never gets a chance to come back down, which it normally would, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. And what should happen is that when that dangerous or life-threatening, when that acute stress stimulus disappears, then we come back down to rest and digest. But for a lot of people, it never happens. They just stay there because everything to them is like, ugh! And so they never get a chance to come back down. What happens is that acute stress turns into chronic stress. And when you have chronic stress, you're going to have problems.
So you're saying then the acute stress is the body's natural mechanism, which is a survival thing to run away from things with sharp teeth. But in the past, because once we've run away, we've dissipated all that built up energy, it's fine. What you're saying today, that chronic stress is where our brains perceive a stress today, reacts in the same way, but because it doesn't have the ability to dissipate that, and because there's this ongoing potential threat, is that sustained stress is what you'd call chronic stress.
Yes, well, it has the ability to come back down, but because of the way we think, feel, and behave, because of the way we've been programmed or being programmed or program ourselves, we stay that way. We have the ability, but we don't engage that ability because everything is like, ugh! So then it stays that way. But we all have the ability to let that go, come back down to our normal resting, breathing stress level,
right,
and then carry on until the next acute, because so acute is up and down. Stress is up and stay there. That's the difference between the two.
I've heard that the appendix is a redundant organ. Is it possible that the stress mechanism, given that we live in a supposedly civilized environment, is it a redundant process, or do you think it still has value in us as beings, albeit if we allow it to get too far?
Oh, absolutely. We don't have to be on a trekking holiday in Southeast Asia to want to have that positive stress mechanism kick in. When we have something that we perceive as life-threatening, somebody breaking into our house, somebody pointing a knife, or somebody threatening us, inside of a pub on a Friday night. There are all kinds of different situations that would make that go up. And then that whole mechanism kicks in, because that's dangerous to our safety and security of our physical well-being.
Sure.
Or our mental well-being.
So, what is going on then? So, as rational human beings, if I know that the boss is giving me a lot of stuff, that it's not going to kill me. I know that logically. I know that he's not trying to kill me. And he's not necessarily a threat in the my life is going to be threatened type way. So what is it that's going on that causes my body to react in the same way as though it were a life-threatening?
Well, again, we come down to those 4 high-frequency categories. So, for example, when you ask that question, the first thing that comes to mind is lack of motivation. I said motivation was one of those categories. I have a lot of clients come in and say something like, well, I've got a report. So today's Tuesday, and I've got a report that's due next week, Monday. And I'm only, quarter of the way through it. And for some reason or another, I don't really feel motivated. Like I can't seem like to get my head into it. I can't seem to get into it and want to sort of dive in there and finish it. And I'm getting stressed about that, because this is going to go on my record. It could affect my job opportunities, and et cetera, my pay raise, a promotion, whatever. And so people get stressed about that.
So you're saying actually the stress isn't so much the fact they've got to do the report. The stress is the fact that they don't feel they've got what they need to do the report, and it's the consequence of that. So that in itself is a stressor.
Yeah, and remember, I also said that planning is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
That particular scenario, again, a lot of people will tell me this, and it comes down to the difference between whether they're time management or task management type people, whether they have proper problem-solving techniques that they're using or not. And these are all things that come under the planning category of those 4 categories I mentioned earlier. So once we start to address those issues, then we affect the stress level. So once I show somebody how to get motivated quicker, stay there longer, and perhaps what to do when it does come down, because we're human, it does come down, but right. how to get across that bridge until it goes back up again. Right. When we learn that, then we learn how to become better motivated for longer, then our stress comes down.
Right. So is this creating a greater level of resilience to being stressed? Because I suppose there are 2 elements. There's I'm stressed, therefore I need to deal with those symptoms. And then there's, okay, let me put myself in a way such that I'm less likely to get stressed. Is that broadly how you identify the 2 different ways of dealing with it?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
So could you just talk to us physiologically then? What goes on in the body when we're stressed? So you mentioned the sympathetic nervous system sort of kicks into action. What is actually going on, and what would we experience to say, okay, well, this obviously is a stressful situation?
If we're high blood pressure, once it's not genetic, high blood pressure, lack of appetite, trouble sleeping, a wide range of physical, mental, and emotional ailments or maladies that we may suffer from, that are the symptoms of the stress, not the stress itself.
Are they? What sort of time frame would they evolve over? So the other question is, if all of a sudden now I suddenly got stressed, then I won't know what my blood pressure is. But what would I experience in my body right now to know? Oh, actually, this is a situation that is stressful, that would then may lead to sleep problems and mental well-being problems. What would I experience?
You could experience becoming sweaty. You could experience becoming anxious. You could experience a lack of focus and attention. Your mind starts to wander to other things. You start to worry. You become so there. The best way to answer this is probably say that there are 4 negative stressors:
Mm-hmm.
time, anticipation, situation, and encounter.
Right.
And any one of those 4 negative stressors are going have the ability to create physical, mental, and emotional ailments. And depending on who you are, you can go up or you can come down. Some people, when the stress kicks in, they just lose the will to do anything. They just become immobile. Other people on the other extreme, they get stressed out. They start running around and start doing all kinds of things to try and figure out what's going on, or that adrenaline just starts to kick in, and they start cleaning and fixing and tidying and doing and all kinds of things that they wouldn't normally do.
So is a change in behaviour for someone who maybe normally
Yeah.
quite frantic, suddenly becoming a little less more passive, or someone who's more passive becoming more frantic. That changes behaviour is a good way of
Yeah,
spotting.
well, yeah, absolutely. Well, as I say, how we think, feel, and behave.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how we behave, how we're going to react. Remember, I said
Sure.
action and reaction. So that behavior in this scenario, then it would be reacting. How they react to that.
So you use the term anxiety a couple of times here, and I've heard it and seen it almost used interchangeably around stress and anxiety. Anxiety is stress. But I do believe that they are distinctly different in what they are. Could you just please explain what they are, please?
They are. Yes, you're absolutely right. And another great question. Stress and anxiety, people use those 2 words to mean the same thing. Either stress or anxiety, because they think they are both the same thing, but they are not. Stress is the cause of or the result of most of what's wrong with us today. Stress is a response, I guess you could say, to the pressures many individuals experience as a result of daily modern life. Now, these pressures in turn cause chemical reactions, as we were saying earlier, inside of us, such as releasing adrenaline. And they can lead to depression, high blood pressure, and a host of other negative side effects. Anxiety is one of those many adverse side effects. It's the process during which a person becomes frightened and apprehensive of the future. When anxiety begins to manifest itself, physically, dizziness, panic attacks, any level of pain. See, stress is a response to something specific. Anxiety has no identifiable root.
Right.
And this is why anxiety is considered a legitimate mental disorder, while stress is not.
Oh, really?
Yes. So to be diagnosed with anxiety, symptoms must persist for a period of anywhere between 3 to 4, maybe up to 6 months.
Right.
Stress typically goes away as the stressors disappear, while anxiety with no identifiable root cause tends to stick around longer.
Right.
And therefore is more difficult to treat. That's why stress is not normally mistaken for anxiety by professionals.
Okay. Is anxiety just excessive stress that's tripped into? So anxiety is a longer version of having sustained stress for a long time, and then once the stress has gone away, they become conditioned to the reaction. Is that a way of describing it?
It's you're not far from it. I've had clients over the years. Once we bring that stress down, the anxiety comes down as well. But again, I can ask a client, so or through a process, we find out what is causing their stress.
Right.
Whereas when somebody with anxiety I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it.
Sure.
So that's when we switch the questions to then start to identify the stress, because anxiety is a symptom of prolonged stress.
Right. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to dive into a little bit about being able to spot someone suffering from stress and or anxiety. So this recording is going to be targeted at helping parents help their teens deal with stress. So educating on what stress is because they may not have been told about it, but then also for parents to be able to spot when their teen is maybe struggling with anxiety or stress. Because I know, certainly as a teenager, when I struggled, I would just go and shut the door and lock myself away and try and deal with it myself. And I would shut myself off from potential support from my parents. And I know in extreme that teenagers do this, go to all sorts of dark places. So what advice can you give to parents about the things to look for that would help them spot whether their teen is stressed and or anxious?
Well, in addition to what I've already described as the four stressors and the four categories in which stress seems to reside, in terms of students, I guess, let's look at it. Let's divide it into three sections. Let's divide it into acute stress, which we've already spoke about. We'll speak about it in terms of scenario of students, episodic stress, and chronic stress. So acute stress for a student would be, well, it can be good or bad, really. It can be. Good acute stress would be, they're excited about an event, some social event or some sporting event, or maybe some event where they're going to receive some praise or some certification for their work. Bad acute stress for students would be exam marks maybe coming up. When we're students, a lot of times, we're our friends, we come and go into different groups. And so sometimes, students, when I think I'm going to lose a friend, that may cause me to have that acute level of, that stress rise up for a period of time until I can learn how to deal with that. Episodic stress would be, I guess, acute stress that occurs more frequently. Really, there are patterns, and they're associated with that kind of stress. So, if you notice that your teenager, your student, is all of a sudden thinking, feeling, or behaving differently than they normally would under certain circumstances, or just in general, I guess, maybe, then there may be some stress involved in that. That's making that happen. Chronic stress, well, I guess it's pretty much the same for everybody. Really, never-ending stress that relentlessly wears you away, doesn't it?
So a big thing you've mentioned throughout all of those is the change in behavior, thinking, feeling, behavior. That any changes in those. So if thinking, I would imagine if they're stressed, they're thinking differently. That might manifest as things they say. So they might be a little bit more abrupt or a little bit more angry in the way they respond. In terms of feeling, the emotions may be kicking in. They might have more extremes of emotions than they used to. I suppose with behavior, you might see them be sulky or more energetic. Whatever it is, it's the change that is a key thing there in all of those.
Yeah. Yeah, common causes of stress for students: too much homework,
Yeah.
heavy workload, maybe a lack of being organized, lack of support, either at home or at the educational institution. Some students get stressed when they don't have a lot of downtime, when they have too little downtime, because everybody needs a chance to kind of once in a while just rest and refocus. And a lot of students, don't do that when it's not schoolwork, it's social work, isn't it? Transitioning to a new environment is often a big cause of stress for students.
Yes.
Especially when they have to go now they stop going from one school, now they have to go into a new school. And what's all that about? Who's there, and what's that going to be like? And then And then I guess like for a lot of people, whether they're students or adults, changes in routine,
Yeah.
and students are affected very much by changes in routine.
Sure, sure. I think another stress to add to those that I think we probably wouldn't be aware of, and I think the parents of any teens probably wouldn't be aware of, and in fact, probably most teachers wouldn't be aware of, is that because of the impact of social media these days, that all of a sudden now the playground isn't just the 200 kids I can see running around. Actually, the playground now is anyone who's connected via any of the social media platforms, and the online bullying and the expectations and the putting up the perfect life and all that pressure, I think, is something that most of us adults just don't realize is there, and that's a huge stress as well.
Look, Michael, I'm going to tell you, all the research that I've seen in the last half dozen years, at least, right up until some research that was taken during the pandemic. Yeah, so up until that got that this research was released just at the beginning of this year, back I think in February or March. Um, all that I've seen, all the surveys, all the polls, all the research, the largest group of individuals who are reporting, um, things like self-harm and having suicidal thoughts and are registering their inability to be able to cope, are all young people in that, specifically in that age bracket between 18 and 24. But that was the age bracket that's traditionally surveyed. I would, with no hesitation, widen that out to an age that's lower than 18. Let's go down to 14 and 15-year-olds that I've seen come across my path.
I think teenagers are now older, younger. I
Yeah.
think the maturity that they've now got and their worldly awareness because of the internet, because of social media, is much. So I would imagine that's probably true as well. So if a parent spots that they believe that their teenager is struggling with stress through changes that they've seen, and probably they'll be aware of the work pressures and everything, so it would be expected. What would be your recommendation for a parent? How should they support their teen in those situations? What would be your recommendations?
Communication is the first thing. Um, Probably more listening than talking.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, seek the help of a professional.
Sure. What's the biggest mistake parents tend to make that they should avoid in suddenly seeing their teen stressed?
Um, a lot of the young people that I've had the absolute privilege to speak to and help in my career, have reported to me that most of the time they're loving parents. I mean, the parents mean well, they do, but a lot of times it's just pick yourself up, sort yourself out, stuff it all down inside, and keep moving.
Mm.
That is not the answer.
There's like burying it and
Yeah.
suppressing it. Okay. And what's the downside? What's the danger when that happens?
Well, you keep stuffing it down there. After a while, there was only so much capacity. It's going to explode.
Mm.
And when it explodes, it doesn't always make a big noise.
Right.
A lot of young people suffer. They suffer in silence. They don't think anybody hears them. They don't think anybody cares. Nobody's relating to them in the way that they want to be related to, which is why I say ask a few questions, but ask the questions in a way that's going to allow them to open up and feel that they're being not just listened to, but being heard.
Yeah. That's important. And do you think, would you recommend parents to bring someone else in to do that, like a friend or a favoured aunt or a cousin or something? Because I know that sometimes the dynamics between parent and teen, because it's a fraught time anyway, just in growing up. Would you recommend that?
For teenagers, there's not much difference between an adult parent and their brother or sister, which would be the uncle or the aunt or a
Right.
neighbor. They need somebody who's a professional. They
Right.
really do. Somebody who has experience dealing with people at that in that environment, in that age group, who knows how to help them open up and express themselves in an environment that they feel safe in. Safe is a 4-letter word, and it's a great 4-letter word. They need to feel safe. And a lot of times, even though some of the parents will do some good, they are effective to some degree, some of them. But again, a lot of the students that I've spoken with over the years, they say, yeah, but they were just saying that because they're my parent. They're supposed to say that.
Right.
And that's so in other words, just right over, like, it's not going in and staying. They just
Yeah.
figure, yeah, whatever. That's not helping. But however, when they may hear that same thing from somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game, that's when it might make the difference.
Well, I think getting the help of a professional like yourself in these things is absolutely the best form of intervention that you could have for that. In lieu of that, when people are just dealing with what advice do you give to teens about, okay, right, so you're going to get stressors because that's what life is. These are things that you can do in advance so that you're more resilient to stress. And then when it does occur, because it will occur regardless of how strong and fit and healthy and mentally robust you are, here are things that you can do to help alleviate stress. So what would be your advice to teens along those lines?
Well, you said the A word there. If I can just have a few moments to explain, me personally, the way I operate with my clients, all up and down the ladder, however old they are, whatever walk of life they come through, I go out of my way not to give people advice.
Ah, yes, of course.
And one of the reasons I do that is because, I've studied the human subconscious mind for 30 years. And let me ask you a question. I mean, this is rhetorical, but let's just tell you how I do this.
Sure.
Just ever so briefly, because you said that A word, and I take exception to that. Not to
Okay.
you, but let me
Sure.
explain it. So I'd say to somebody, look, I'm not going to give you, if we work together, I'm not going to give you any advice. I'm going to go out of my way not to give you advice. People usually kind of look at me a bit strange and they think, well, but hang on a minute. If I'm coming down here every week to have a meeting with you, get a session with you, like, I thought I was going to be getting advice. So let me ask you a question. Gotten a lot of advice in your life? Yeah. How much of it was bad? A lot. Well, I already know that in the back of because that's what my certificates would tell you, right? I already know that somewhere at a subconscious level, or in the back of your mind, as you might say, you're going to be thinking, oh yeah, today's Monday. Yeah, I got to go see Chess. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Got to go see Chess. Yeah, I got to go online with Chess. Get some more advice. Ooh, don't want any of that. Oh my God, we're paying him for it too, double. So all of a sudden this wall goes up. So then how can we get the good work done between us if there's a wall there? So the first thing I want you to do is not to construct that wall, which is why I'm telling you, I'm not going to be giving you any advice. If I feel the urge to give you advice, I'll give you a spoiler. We can discuss it, and then we can decide whether I should give you the advice or not. And then they say to me, well, if you're not going to be giving me advice, and thanks for that, but if you're not going to give me advice, what are we going to be doing? And I say, well, you've got a set of tools inside of you right now that you're probably not using very well, and we can discuss that because you wouldn't have been here looking for help if you were using it. But you've got another set of tools inside of you that you don't even know you have. But I know what they are. So my role is, how I work with people is, I'm going to bring that set of tools out. I'm going to blow the dust off of them because they've never been used. I'm just going to explain you to yourself. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to explain the tools that you have, what they are, why you would use them, when to use them, but most importantly, how to use them. And that's all I'm going to do. And that's all that in the 30 years I've been doing this in different parts of the world, that resonates with each and every person I've ever spoken to in my private practice.
And what might be an example of one of those tools? Because the curiosity part of me is going, this stuff I've got that I'm not using. I want to know what that is. Can you give us an example of what one of those might be?
Sure. Well, I will. And on the way to that, I must repeat then that it's all about how we think, feel, and behave
Right.
in relation to people, places, and things. And one of those people on the list should be yourself. So how do I think, feel, and behave in relation to how I think, feel, and behave? It's kind of a closed loop. So, for example, one that comes to mind as you ask that question then. So a lot of people are interested in, let me take this out of the student realm for just a moment if I can, to make it a bit quicker, because I suspect we're running on a bit of time here. But when I'm talking to adults, and we'll bring this back down to the student level in a minute, and you'll quickly see how you can do that. But when I'm talking to adults, a lot of adults tell me that they want to be rich, they want to be wealthy, they want to be independently wealthy, they want to have financial resources. All good, no shame, no blame, nothing wrong with having a few quid in the bank. But when I study those people, what they're doing is each and every day they're going out working very hard, very, very hard, trying not to be poor. Well, those two things aren't the same thing, only described differently.
So let me just make sure I understand that, because I just want to make sure I understand this. So before we go any further, so you're saying that they say they want to be rich, but their efforts is trying to avoid being poor, which, as you say, seems to be the same thing, but the focus is different.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So what happens is that people spend a lot of time running away from the negative they don't want, which in this particular case would be to be poor. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can be poor. We're just talking about financially, because the common currency is something we all have in common,
Sure.
right? So a lot of people spend a lot of energy, a lot of resources trying not to be poor on the way to being rich. So when we're running away from the negative we don't want, when we're focused on the negative we don't want, we're not focused on the positive we do want. So we tend to, bump into the barriers and trip over the obstacles that will in life will invariably appear. But in this particular case, if I was literally to change my focus, and if I was to focus on the positive I do want, then I would be better able to see the obstacles and barriers that appear and be able to navigate them better, wouldn't I?
Gotcha.
So it's a matter of, are we concentrating on positive we do want, or are we focused on the negative we don't want? And if we're focused on the negative we don't want, that's a recipe for disaster.
Can I ask you a question then? This is going to be a bit of a challenging question. Why aren't you called the calm master? With that
I don't know. Well, again, very, very good question, because people talk about their stress.
Gotcha.
And it's their stress they need addressed. When we address the stress and what is stressing and what is causing them to have that stress, we bring that down, they become calm, and then they can go forward and think about that.
So in an ideal world, then you would be called the calm master, because marketing and putting yourself out there, you have to be called the stress master, because that's how people are drawn to you. Gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. More people have been programmed to avoid pain than gravitate toward pleasure, even though pleasure is what they say they want.
Is that a survival thing, though, that we avoid pain because that keeps us alive? We are naturally negative. Is that the case, or do you say that's a learned behavior?
It's well, when we're talking about the positive stress, when we see that tiger or that life-threatening or perceived or real danger, imminent danger, yes, we want to. We're not thinking about, if I get away from this tiger, the best thing to do is go lay down in a nice, comfortable bed and have a rest. No, we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about avoiding the pain and having that tiger's teeth in our leg or some other body part.
Yeah.
So when our positive stress kicks in, yes, but all this negative stress is everything that encompasses that is learned behavior. And I'll just give you one quick example. Again, we're taught, most of us were taught, and I don't mind telling you, I was taught the same way, brought up in the same society, only in Canada. We were taught up, don't do this, don't do that, don't. We're all told what not to do. And when I got to be a teenager, the first time I heard this phrase, what was it saying the other day? I forget now. The process of elimination.
Right.
I said, oh, hang on a minute. That's what that means? So anything else I can do, because you told me all the things I can't do. So I guess anything by process of elimination, everything else is acceptable. Well, not really, but for the most part. So we're all told what not to do rather than what to do.
Right.
And this sets us up for that same scenario you just asked me about.
So if just so I make sure I understand you. So your approach then is to help people understand from thinking, from feeling and believing how those relate to people, places, relationships. And is there a fourth one I've missed?
No. Thinking, feeling and behaving.
Yeah.
In relation to people, places, and things.
People, places, and things. So
that's who we are, and that's what's on planet Earth.
Right. So you're saying that your approach then is about helping people, show people where there may be flaws in that approach such that they have a stress reaction, identifying that and then shifting that approach. So whilst the people, place and things still exist, their relationship with those has changed such that they're no longer a threat. Is that pretty much?
Yeah. Look, supposing I have a meeting every Tuesday afternoon with Sally, and it's just I'm driving back to my office, and I'm looking for a tree to jam my car into just so I can get out half, because I just lost I got to see Sally every Tuesday afternoon. It's just driving me crazy.
Right.
Okay, so I can't change Sally, but what are the tools that I have that I can change the way I think or feel and obviously behave, how I react to Sally? So how can I change my experience coming out of my meeting every week with Sally? Because I can't change Sally, but I can change me. So I'm not looking for a lorry to bang into to end it all. So I don't have to see her again next Tuesday and the next Tuesday and the next Tuesday. Right? So how can I change how I think, feel, and behave in relation to people, which would, in this particular case, would be Sally? So what are the tools that I have? So I have to modify the way I think, feel, and or behave. So I modify myself. I change my own approach. Mm-hmm. And then I have a better experience coming out of that meeting with Sally.
And having seen the testimonials on your sites and the evidence of the work that you've done, this is a long-term result, because I think you say on your website you'll help you take control of stress once and for all. And I suppose from what you're saying, I can see how that happens. How do you balance that against some of the techniques that are more interruptive of the stress mechanism, such as the mindfulness techniques, the breathing techniques? What's your relationship? How does your work relate to those?
My work relates to those in this way. I think, look, there's a lot of, open the window and get a breath of fresh air, or go for a walk on your lunch break. And a lot of people don't even get a lunch break. Free gym memberships, potted plants in the cafeteria. I mean, those are all nice things. They may possibly have some positive effect on the symptoms of your stress, but they're not going to change your stress. They're not going to affect the stress. And what I'm about more is the cause rather than the symptom.
It sounds like this is a long-term relationship, and it's one I would encourage people to engage in and to develop that, having seen my own challenges with stress over the years. Whilst people are sort of finding people they can work with, what can you recommend? What strategies can you... I'm heading into the advice route here. I don't really want to go down that route, but in lieu of sitting down with you and working through those issues, Is there something that you can give to people to start thinking about that would be an off ramp into your work?
Yeah. Look, I hate to sound like a broken record, but what's true is true. It's just true. So my top tip, then, if you want to put it that way, my top tip for learning how to control your stress is figure out what you can control and what you can't. And there's no point in getting stressed out about the things you can't control, like the facts, other people, right? If you're unwilling or unable, there's no point. So the only thing that you can control is yourself. And we come back to the thinking, feeling, and behaving again. Yeah.
It's funny. I've just been reading some work on Stoicism, and that was one of the recommendations about. So The Ego is the Enemy is a book by Ryan Holiday, and he talked about exactly that. So it's the second time I've heard that. So I love that. And there's a prayer, isn't there, that Lord, make us understand what we can control and what we can't, and that we know the difference. It's the same sort of advice, isn't it?
Reinhold Neubar.
Right.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, which is my favorite part of it. That last line is the one that I resonate with.
Brilliant. Ches, that's been absolutely fantastic. You've covered a lot of stuff there for us. You've helped explain what stress is. You've simplified it as well, which I think I love the think, feel, and behave, and the people, places, and things. I love that because that just really simplifies. And I think when you've got that perspective on it, it then makes the ability to recognize what is it you can change, what is it you can't, and know the difference, and allows that a greater sense of control. Where can people find out more about your work and can get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, I guess, thestressmaster.com. They can send me an email if they want, I guess, at Ches, CHES. There's my name there on the screen. I see Ches at thestressmaster.com. That's the best way to get through to me, I guess, if they want to. Yeah.
And just remind us of your 2 books as well, please.
If I may, I have them here. I wrote this in 2014. Choice and Change. Yep. It became an international bestseller after it was uploaded to Amazon worldwide. And this is something I put out just last year, How to Get Control of Your Stress Instead of Stress Controlling You. Fantastic. And this is also available online as a digital download.
Superb.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. That was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Look, I'm delighted, Michael. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Brilliant.